Hey, it's Melissa from Kiwi Banana, and today I'm going to be going into part 2 of a topic within a topic that I discussed in the previous video, and I'll leave a link in the description box down below for that video as well. I'll provide a little bit of a backstory before I get started, and this video is going to start basically with me talking about a person that ran into the main structure that gets burnt at Burning Man, and this occurred this year, and I was at the event and I witnessed it happen along with about 50,000 other people. Now, I was unsure about making these videos, but someone left a comment in a video of mine in the past questioning why I didn't talk about it. So that's really what has pushed me to really talk about this. It's not that I didn't want to, it's just I don't want to upset anybody. And I also know that these topics are not generally considered advertise friendly. They're not considered family friendly content. So YouTube can put things in place to try and stop your content being reached to people. And you know, the whole point of making content like that is so that it reaches the people that it needs to. But sometimes there are measures put in place, you know, some of the freedom of speech and rules that YouTube have now put in place. So I'm hoping it still reaches some people that do need to see it. You know, and if it's not considered that they necessarily need to, then at least you now have some information that you may be able to take with you and use in your life later on, or even help someone else. So there's quite a lot to cover, and the reason I wanted to split this into two is because I wanted to retain your attention reasonably well, although the last video was still quite long, and this one will probably be quite long as well. The previous one I went into the topic of drugs, and this video I'm going to go into the topic of more to do with mental health. Now, these are not necessarily two different things. They definitely have a lot of overlap, and obviously drugs can have a lot to do with your mental health, and your mental health can have a lot to do with drugs. And I guess with the event of the man running into the fire, it sits really well within these two topics, and they're two things that should at least be discussed and possibly looked at, and hopefully we can learn something from it. It's a terrible thing in many people's eyes of what happened, but all that we can do now is to try and see if we can make something good from it. Now, this is not the first time someone has died at the gathering of Burning Man, and this is not the first gathering that I've been to where someone has run into a fire. Things do happen. I don't mean to try and demise what's happened or discredit what's happened or make it seem out like it's nothing, but I just want people to know that it does happen, and for me to deny that it happens is, you know, it's lying to you. You know, things like this happen within normal society, if that's what you want to call it, and things like this can happen outside normal society. And the reason I use normal and non-normal is because I consider a lot of the gatherings I go to quite different to what I would experience in everyday life, and experience that most people in this world would know. And you know, most of the time I go to the reason I go to these gatherings is because I love the community, and I love this sort of more openness, I guess, and people tend to be a bit more open-minded, and you can learn a lot of things. You know, if you're a growth junkie, like this is the sort of, you know, these sort of things can be really good. Anyway, moving on from that. You know, when I talked about my previous video, I talked about how drugs, yes, they are at Burning Man. I'm sure you could find them if you went there with the intention of finding them, and depending on what you wanted, you'd probably be able to find it too. For me to deny that they're there is, you know, again, that's lying to you. And I guess a lot of the time what gets portrayed in the mainstream media is things like that because it's controversial, or it's, you know, it's what the public want to hear about. They want to hear about sex and they want to hear about drugs. And so that's what the media portrays. Burning Man is like a sex festival full of drugs, which is not. Although I'm sure if you wanted to go there with the intentions of that, it probably could happen if that's what you wanted. It's not, the people I met, it's not, that was not their intention to go there for that, and that's not the sort of burn that they wanted, and it's not necessarily the burn that they got. They got what they wanted, and they're not into those things. Anyway, also the medical science showed that the person that ran into this fire was not on any drugs during this, or alcohol either, which, you know, alcohol is a drug again, but people tend to think is alcohol and drugs are separate things. I sort of touched on that a little bit in the previous video. But what I want to talk about is mental health, and there was nothing to show that this person had suffered any mental health issues, although I'm sure we all, you know, we all at some point in our life, or even just some point in the day or whatever, don't always necessarily feel, you know, happiness all the time, you know, because I guess we portray, you know, if you're happy all the time, then you've got really good mental well-being. And that's not the case either. So, you know, I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this. I know personally myself, I have a lot of people that I'm close with that suffer with mental illness on a daily basis. You know, so, and I'm sure there's many of you that may suffer from something yourself, or you know somebody that suffers, or there could be someone that suffers from a mental illness that you don't know about, but they are, you know, within your life. They just choose not to tell you about it, because, you know, it's, for some people it can be an embarrassment. For some people it's seen as a weakness, you know, and that's another reason why things can be taken so far. Anyway, moving on from that. So obviously mental health is very important to your well-being. You know, it's important to talk about it, to listen, to create space, to recognise when someone is possibly not being themselves, or is possibly being quite detrimental. Or, you know, you may personally think they're being detrimental to their life, they may not. But, you know, to be able to bring it up in a way, you know, if you can, to get them to think about it, like, are they feeling good? Are they not feeling good? Do they need someone to talk to? You know, you're there. It's important. Another thing I wanted to mention though is, I'm not saying that this person actually was mentally unwell, or that this person was on drugs or anything to actually run into the fire and you know, be no longer with us because of that. I also have an understanding that you can be in a sense of euphoria with no outside substance altering your mind, and do things like that as well. It is possible. The mind is, I don't know how to put it, but it's a very interesting, you know, part of the human body. There's so much we don't know about it, and we're still learning so much. You know, science is still trying to discover so much about it. So yeah, I've talked about obviously that mental health is important, that people can you know, head into an area of darkness within their lives. There are people that live in that darkness all the time, every day. And there's some people where, you know, they've even gotten into an existential sort of crisis to the point where they're like, even ending my life is you know, it's beyond that point. You know, they're like, why would I want to end my life? You know, depending on what their belief is, that they might consider that they are going to have to relive life again sooner if they do that. It's yeah, I'm sorry this is a bit of a down topic, if you want to consider it that, but it needs to be talked about, and I want to encourage you to, if you need to talk to somebody, please find somebody to talk to. And if you know somebody that looks like they're struggling, you know, try and help them in any way you can. If you can't, you know, if you can't feel like you can do that yourself, then find someone else or a organisation or something that could help them. You know, and the reason that the man, you know, this person went into fire, we don't know. He may, like I said, may have even just been in a state of euphoria on absolutely no substances and run into the fire. But I guess the way society is and the way we've been conditioned and brought up, it's kind of considered that, you know, if you do something like that, then you are either a really suicidal person or that you're really, you know, fucked up on drugs, as people call it. And sometimes that's not even the case either. But those are still two things, most important things that would probably need to be discussed. I would imagine that the burn following on from this will probably be different again. They will probably put even more measures. I know after there were incidents with people going underneath vehicles, not intentionally, but going underneath vehicles at the gathering in the past, they then put measures in place about how the vehicles had to be built. They could only get certain certifications, they had to meet certain requirements, and you could only drive at 5 miles per hour. You know, and depending on the size of your vehicle would depend on where you're allowed to drive as well. And you know, and they encourage things, especially at night. It's very dangerous sometimes. If you're not lit up, they really encourage it. There'll be people out there gifting like lights and everything, like encouraging you. Please make sure you're lit up. You know, so they, you know, some people say, oh, it's terrible now. Burning Man will never be the same when something happens and then rules get changed or whatever. But it's only just meaning that, you know, Burning Man is not like a utopia where everything's absolutely perfect. We're constantly evolving and changing and trying to make it better for everyone that goes. And, you know, we really do want to make it a safe place in certain, you know, in many ways, so that people can still enjoy it. So yeah, this is the end of part 2. I hope that it was of some help to you, or if not someone else, and I do hope that it does still reach some people, even though I talk about I guess you consider reasonably controversial topics. And stay tuned, I will see you in the next videos. They will be more lighthearted, that's for sure. I hope you've done something that makes you happy today. See ya.